our local forecast is one thing from AccuWeather. The actual forecast from the Old Farmers Almanac might be something entirely different. We're on the line this morning with Ben Kilbride, an assistant editor for the Old Farmers Almanac. 2022 edition is out. Our conversation brought to you this morning by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Ben, good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you with us here today. See, I have this image in my mind since this book has been published. It was founded in 1792 of everybody at the Old Farmers Almanac still sitting in an office with an oil lamp and a feather quill pen. It's not quite that way anymore, is it?
Not quite, but some days depends on how we're feeling.
The original Farmers Almanac. Let's make sure we get that in there because this is the original. It always comes with the tagline, useful with a pleasant degree of humor. It really is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to do with every issue is, it's supposed to be like a reference guide, but also we want you to have fun learning about some different interesting things, and that's every time you pick it up, you're going to learn something different.
You really are, and I'm looking at this year's edition right now. We've been telling our folks about it all day long here on Indiana in the Morning. The first thing people think of, though, when they think about the almanac is, what's the winter going to be like? It always comes out in the fall, and everybody's wondering, how bad's it going to be this winter? So let's start there for our region just east of Pittsburgh, which should place us in Region 3, the Appalachian region.
Yes.
We're looking at a fairly typical winter, aren't we?
Yeah. It's going to be slightly colder than normal, but that's just like a few degrees on average throughout the entire winter. And that's, every winter is like a little slightly different. But it's going to be a little drier, so there's going to be a little bit less precipitation, a little bit less snow. But the periods that you're going to be looking for snow are going to be in the beginning of December, beginning of January, and the middle of February. So if you do like snow, those are the times you're going to be looking out for.
Yeah, and of course the other thing that we wonder about and really worry about, of course, is ice coming along with that snow. What will be the coldest periods of this coming winter?
So that's going to be pretty much the entirety of December, and then most of January, and then through the beginning of February. So there's actually quite a lot of cold periods this time, but there's going to be less precipitation, so hopefully that will mean there will be less ice.
Yeah, and we look at the winter, and that seems to be uppermost in our minds because it's what's coming, but then after that comes the rest of the year, and I'm looking at the rest of the year, and it looks like 2022 is going to really be another typical type of Western PA year in terms of its weather.
Yeah, and that's surprising because a lot of other regions are experiencing some pretty different weather. So I think you guys are lucky there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, there are so many different sections of this book, though, and that's what I want to get into with you this morning. In fact, there's one particular section where you talk about the fear of different types of weather and the actual word that is associated with each of those, which I found hilarious that there are people that have such great fears. But there are some wonderful articles, great recipes. I'm looking right now at an article that is actually a very serious article about our state bird, the ruffed grouse. It's having a real struggle right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, it has for a long time. But it's mostly just a loss of habitat, so they need really particular type of forested habitat with downed logs for what they call drumming, which is their mating call. The males will go up onto a very particular downed log in the woods, and then they'll beat their wings at supersonic speeds to create this low, deep kind of almost like a Jeep starting up noise. And you really, when you hear it in the woods, I'm sure maybe you've heard it as well. It sounds you more feel it in your chest than you actually hear it. It's really cool.
Oh yeah, I've heard it all my life. As a matter of fact, I grew up in an area where we were on a farm and we had all kinds of woods surrounding us. And I live in an area right now where it's quite wooded. So yeah, the ruffed grouse. It's not a sound I hear all that frequently anymore, but I recognize it as soon as I hear it. It really is distinctive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is.
All right, let's talk about some of the other sections of the book because there are all kinds of them. There's a gardening section. The recipe section I found very, very interesting this year. What are the favorite sections for you, Ben?
So, I mean, you named two of my favorites right there, gardening and food. But also, we have one that's a particular article that's about farmers, which, as the Old Farmers Almanac has grown through the years, most of our readership are not farmers these days. They're mostly gardeners and, people just wanting to learn about farming and gardening. Mm-hmm. So this article, I think, is really great. We've been doing it for a few years, where we've interviewed a number of farmers from around the country and Canada, where we just ask them some basic questions about, how'd your farm get started? What's hard about farming? What really makes you do it? And it's really just the idea is to get people to know who's growing our food, which, in this day and age, we're much further away from the people, we're disconnected from the whole food source process. Mm-hmm. So it's great to actually see and talk to and hear the voices of these people who are growing the food for us.
The articles themselves in the book sometimes might surprise us, like the anniversary section, where it talks about the 1972 Canada-Soviet Hockey Summit, which I remember very well, and what a groundbreaking time that was. That was something that surprised me. You turn the page and you come across that in the Old Farmer's Almanac.
Yeah, so I mean, we were always trying to put a whole different range of things in here, and that's everything, including sports. So that's a really great one. Anybody who loves hockey is going to like that one. It's a really interesting piece.
I think also interesting in the amusement section is the article entitled "Remains to be Seen." There are some very famous animals that are highlighted there.
Yeah, that's a funny one. So that's all about different animals and people that have been, stuffed or preserved in certain ways, and then put on display for people to see. And the funny thing about this article is that it was written by somebody at the Almanac, I think about 5 years ago, and the joke that we had every year, was that it remained to be seen, and but now it's finally out here, so now you can see it.
I like it, and you're right. I said animals, but there are human beings as a part of this as well. It's just fascinating. It really, really is. We're talking this morning with Ben Kilbride. The Old Farmer's Almanac 2022 edition is out. Of course, I'm holding the actual physical book in my hand, but the almanac is much more than that, isn't it?
Yeah. We the almanac itself is what we has been out for the longest. It's been out for 230 years, but as time has gone on, we've had to adapt, we've had to expand. So we also have a website, almanac.com, where you can find tons and tons of information about gardening and food and anything that you could possibly want to know about weather, as well as a number of other publications like the Garden Guide, which is entirely about gardening, comes out in the spring, and a Kids Almanac, which actually just came out. Our newest edition just came out this summer, which is really great for kids and for adults. I enjoy it personally myself.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of great articles about, with with puzzles and games and lots of really fun stuff in it.
I like the article Beyond the Pumpkin Patch in this year's almanac, too. That's a really fascinating one. Had no idea there was even such a word as Cucurbits.
Yeah, so that's the family that pumpkins and squash are from, and that's it's like the overarching group, so that they all were more similar a long time ago, and then they were slowly grown for specific traits, and then they diverged further and further apart. So then you have all these very, very different looking vegetables, but they are actually all the same family. So that's a really fun article because it shows like the diversity of the pumpkins. Like there's one called Gill's Blue Hubbard, which is like this off-green blue color instead of like the traditional orange, or one that's it's called Casper, like Casper the Ghost.
Yeah.
So that one's entirely white. So you can grow any kind of thing. Any kind of pumpkin. They're all very different. So
much in this year's almanac. I think maybe even I'm trying not to do hyperbole here, but it seems like there's more than ever before. And I want to get back to the weather for a second as well, because there are a couple of things in here that maybe they've been in previous almanacs, but I just haven't paid enough attention to them. There's one article, How We Predict the Weather, so we can find out how all of these weather forecasts are and then how accurate was our forecast last winter. It takes a little bit of courage on your part there.
Yeah, so those are both in every edition, and particularly the how accurate our forecast was. We're trying to be transparent about this because we're not 100% accurate. We're about 80% accurate every year. So we want to make sure that that we want to say what we got right, and we want to say what we got wrong, and admit to that. And then you can have more trust in our future predictions because we're being upfront about it. But overall, for how we predict the weather, originally it was all done through solar science, or mostly done through solar science, which is the study of sunspots, which are geomagnetic storms on the surface of the sun. Basically, with that, the more sunspots that there are, the more influence it has on the weather on the planet. But we also currently use all of the great technology that we have for predicting weather, all the satellite technology, all of the weather pattern information. So we combine all of that together with our 230 years of predictions, which really help us be able to predict what's going to be happening in the future.
It is the 230th edition of the Old Farmers Almanac. It is in stores right now. 2022 edition. We're actually going to have some copies to give away as well. Ben Kilbride, it's been fun being with you here today. Almanac.com, is that what you said the website was?
That's correct.
Almanac.com. Ben, have a wonderful day today, and thanks.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you for having me.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.